Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Lost Mines of Phandelver campaign tutorial series. Before we get into the actual campaign itself, there is a few housekeeping items that I would like to go over first. The first change is that I've been asked about trying to find a way to zoom in or provide some form of easy capability for people to be able to read what's on the DM screen under certain circumstances. And I'm starting to play around with that a little bit, and I think I found an option that seems to work. So those of you who have been having issues reading the content of the DM screen, please let me know in the comments what you feel about what I've made changes to here so far. So there are two zoom in capabilities that I've added to the DM screen, none for the player screen. And what I've done is I've added the ability to zoom in on the party sheet, and specifically the character sheet and the party sheet zone. That way you can see what's going on there. As well, I have added the ability to zoom in on the map segment that is on the DM screen for the player's view, because generally I don't use the DM map, which is the smaller of the two maps that you see on the screen, over on the left half of the screen. That's really just a reference point because, as you can see on that map, and you may not be able to, but there are numbers that reference specific zones, and sometimes in the actual campaign description, those numbers will be referenced in relation to what's on the map. So let me know what you feel about that particular change that I've made. I am looking at trying to zoom in on the combat tracker so that you can see what's going on there, and potentially zoom in on the chat box a little bit to show you what is going on there. But thus far, those are the only areas, the two areas that I've got set up now are really the only two areas that I've been able to get working consistently. So let me know in the comments what you feel about that. The next thing to go over is that there is actually a more efficient way to draw a pointer on a particular map. And I'm going to do this one on the player screen so that you can actually see it. So if you hold down the left and the right mouse button at the same time, you can draw a pointer. And that might be a bit difficult to see with the black screen there. But all I did is I simply right-clicked and left-clicked at the same time, and I'm dragging the pointer here. And you can see the distance is changing, and the arrow will be at the end that you drug out to. And then you can just simply clear the pointers that way. If you hold down the Shift key and do the exact same thing, you get a square. If you hold down the Control key and do the exact same thing, you get a circle. And if you hold down the Alt key and do the exact same thing, you get a cone. So that's a much more efficient way to actually go through and draw out a particular pointer or indicator on the map to show what your intent is. For example, when casting, like in this case with the cone, Burning Hands, for example, or using Fairfarn's breath weapon, that kind of thing. Thirdly, a gentleman by the name of Philip Gregg, I believe he goes by Zacchaeus in reference to the Fantasy Grounds community, and he's been very heavily involved in that community, and I thank him for the work that he has done. Has pointed out a couple of things and clarified a couple of things that I had originally made comments about. So I'm going to go through each of them individually as part of this segment of the video. The first is that when sharing out the DM or the specific modules from the DM side of things, and due to the number that I have here, things like the Dungeon Master Guide Players module, it literally just has reference materials for classes and other specific races, stuff like that. So when you as a player create a particular creature or character off of that, everything goes over to the character file as part of that process. Magic items that are referenced directly from the Dungeon Master's Guide or anything like that, they should be copied into the campaign first that you're trying to create, and then it's the job of the campaign to in turn share that information over to the player characters. Another thing about it is that the DMG, for example, shouldn't be shared, as is correctly stated, by Philip to the players at all, because that's information that you as the DM really only need to have, and it's not really designed for that information to be shared across, whereas the player's handbook is. And speaking of the player's handbook, oops, why do I still have that shared? Where is it? The player's handbook. I apparently cannot read. Interesting. Nope. Okay, we'll have to find this the other way. Dungeon Master's Guide. There we go. D&D Player's Handbook. There we go. That's why. That doesn't have to be loaded on the Dungeon Master's side of the setup, if you will, unless they want to use it for reference, because most of the material is already there. And that is really only designed for the players to really make use of. And again, I've been using it as a reference source here, so that's part of the reason why I do have this loaded. So another thing that he has pointed out, and this was in relation to a comment I had made about the party sheet, in that you couldn't directly interact with these particular XP entries to be able to set up the actual experience points and all that for an individual character. He actually pointed out that you could. So if I open up this Goblin Ambush encounter, for example, he indicated that you can grab this value, the experience point value here, and literally drag and drop it into the left box on any one of these fields. So if I drop it into Clever's experience point field, it does give them, or give her, the experience points. So that is a way for you to actually grant an individual party member experience points easily. So let's say you reward players for rolling a natural 20. Let's say you give them 100 experience points each time they do it. Then you could create either an encounter or an element, story quest, or something like that, that allows you to quickly reference and drop the experience points into the appropriate player directly from the party sheet, and you don't have to worry about opening up the character sheet and dragging it into place or anything like that, or trying to find a way to individually share it from here into there. So that clarifies one of the issues that I had been running into, and that solves one of my problems, that I'll probably make a little bit more use of this feature now that I know about it. So another thing that he's pointed out was that in my video on being able to go through and create a table, where I presented the video for creating the weather table that I'm currently using for this particular campaign, I'd indicated that it's possible that players might be able to go through and create a table, and that is actually false. Players are only able to create characters and notes based on what he is stating that Fantasy Ground is capable of supporting. So it is not possible for players to go through and create tables, and I will go and fix up that video as soon as I have a moment to make sure that I clarify that particular point in there as well. Additionally, in relation to that table video, I'd indicated that you could directly drag, and like if you grabbed a sheet by the icon here that would trigger a table roll, and dropped that into the table that I had created. So for example, this weather table here that is showing up on the right, and I'll move this over to here and zoom in on the map so that you can see it. So if you look here, this particular setup that I have here has a square bracket and then the name of another table, and this is a table that exists inside of the table's listing, and I will drag this over as well so that you can see it. So if I look for weather, you'll see that these three tables are what I'm referring to in that particular reference sheet here. Now, in the video, I had dragged it directly from the eye and dropped it into place, and then I later updated it to use the square brackets. There is a semantic difference to this. Both methods work, but utilizing the square bracket method allows that particular table to be imported from another module, or provided by another module, if you will, and actually allow that functionality to kick in and work. Whereas if you drag the I here and drop it into this particular field and have that reference the table in turn, that table has to exist in the module that that table also exists in order for you to actually go through and do it. So to clarify that point, all three of these weather tables here would have to exist in the exact same module that this particular weather table is in order for the functionality to work. The way that it is set up here, these three tables are provided by the Dungeon Master's Guide, and this particular table can exist in my own personal module, and as long as I have the Dungeon Master Guide loaded as part of the library extensions, it will go through and find those three tables and execute the roll. I would, if I didn't do it this way, I would actually have to create my own set of weather tables inside of the module that I'm going to export this particular table into for it to be able to find those values and actually trigger rolls as a result. So that is another point that he wanted to make. Additionally, back when I first started this particular campaign series, I'd shown the ability of using the decal, as they are now called, as opposed to the decal, the way that I've been calling them. So if you look on the Dungeon Master's screen, the decal is that background image with the wizard carrying the staff there, or sorceress possibly carrying the staff, and on the player's side it's the same thing, but it's in both cases it's centered. And that is actually the decal that's provided by the Mines of Phandelver campaign. Those are actually agnostic in the sense that you can load them up in the Pathfinder modules, or if you're playing a Pathfinder game, you can load them up if you're playing a Cypher game or any of the other rule sets that exist, because they're literally they're simply decorative. They're not there. They don't. They're agnostic to the module essentially, or the rule set that's in place. However, themes. So the theme that I have running on both of these particular screens is specific to the rule set that you are going to be using. So this theme, for example, would not necessarily exist for Pathfinder if the author of this theme didn't also create one for Pathfinder that looked exactly the same as this. So that is another thing that he wanted to point out, and again, I thank him for that. I had also stated in the setting up of the campaign and going through and creating your GM name and all that, I had stated that that would be what would show up in the lobby. That was actually incorrect, and that was partially due to me still learning how the lobby functionality worked itself, so I'll totally own up to that particular mistake. But what he has indicated is that when you create your Fantasy Grounds account, the username associated with that particular account is what name will appear in the lobby list. And it will be next to the name of the campaign that you have provided. And that's how players will go through and search for your particular campaign in that particular list of lobby entries. And so there was someone who had also asked how would they find, or how do they get their campaign in that list. Well, you have to have a Fantasy Grounds account created. If you don't, it's not going to show there. Although if you don't have a Fantasy Grounds account created, you're probably running a demo version of the software, and you wouldn't really be able to connect any more than one player to your account anyway. And in that case, it's just easier to do it through an internet connection in respect to that, and use the GM name for that purpose. And he also pointed out that it doesn't matter whether the game is public or private, it will show up in that lobby list. Just simply that the private will require a password in order for you to log into it. That's literally the only difference. So I'd like to thank Philip for those particular points. That was good information, and hopefully you all found that particularly useful. And I've got one more point to address, and this was pointed out by Jesse0317. And they had been watching the video where I had gone through and created the characters and pointed out where I could actually properly find the Tabaxi image. And it's not under library, it's under assets here. So if you go to assets, under portraits, data, D&D 5e, and there's a category here called other. There is the Tabaxi portrait. So I'm actually going to, well, actually I like the image that Clover has, so I'm going to stick with that for now. But this is where I could have found the actual Tabaxi portrait. So I do appreciate the fact that they pointed that out to me. And that covers all of the homework points. So with all the homework out of the way, let's get back to the actual campaign. Now, I've currently intentionally left the player's screen set up where the map actually currently isn't loaded. And one of the shortcuts that players are not always aware of is that as long as the DM has not unshared the map, you as the player can always reopen the map on your own. And you can do that by opening up a character sheet that you have, and I'm doing this on the player screen, and double clicking on the token side of things. And what that will do is that will open up any map that you are currently actively attached to. And that's one of the reasons why when tokens get moved from one map to another, they disappear from the maps you move them off of. And in that respect, it's so that that functionality exists. Otherwise, you could end up clicking that, and all of a sudden you're linking and loading up 300 maps, depending on how many campaigns you've gone through or how many maps you've gone through. So that's one of the reasons why the tokens move from one map to another. So if I were to move Clever to, say, the overworld map, that would disappear from this particular map because you can your token can only exist on one map at a time. So with that in mind, the last time that we had gone through and run this campaign, the party had gone in and dealt with the wolf encounter that exists in the first cavern entry there, and you can see it's still slightly uncovered in the fog of war that exists on the map. Now, there is something that I want to point out as the DM. I totally ignored the fact that those 3 wolves were actually pinned to a chain and a pole that was in the center of the room. They should have technically made a strength check in order to break free of that particular pole before they could actually charge into the character. One, I flat out forgot that that was there, and ironically enough, I only remembered about it 2 days ago when I was going through and trying to plan out how I wanted to do this particular portion of the video. But in general, in order for the players to actually be intercepted by the wolves, they would have had to have already broken away from that particular chain, and I didn't do that. So that is my apologies there. This next section, though, is going to be a bit tricky, and it's one of the more difficult aspects of this particular module, in my opinion, because of how tricky it can actually be. So what the players don't know is that the river that is going through the center of the map and coming out of the cave leads to a series of pools that the goblins have gone through and set up as a potential washout trap, if you will. And if you look on the DM screen, you can see through the fog of war that partway through the upper part of that map there is a bridge that goes across both the walking path and the stream itself. And that goblin will alert goblins that are further back in the area next to where the pool of water is and trigger a trap. A release of that trap, rather, which will trigger a flood that comes down and could potentially wash out the party. Now, as level 1 characters, that actually could be fatal for those particular party members, depending on how much damage they took and whether they succeeded or failed one or more saving throws. I do believe that there is a bit of damage that can occur as part of that process. So I'm just going to quickly open up. Okay, that goes to the steep passage. This is for the overpass. Yeah, here we go. So let's zoom in. So hopefully this is clear enough on the actual zoom in segment there. So the area of the map that I'm referring to is this particular part of the stream here. And these 2 pools act as that particular trap. And it can be released twice, I believe, before this pool is totally empty and void of any additional water. So essentially, the goblins get 2 passes at wiping out the party before they can't do it again without the pool filling up again. But they can trigger this flood, and these wall segments here are collapsible walls. And what'll happen is this particular encounter here, which is along this bridge line, they can call back to actually, you see it here, they can signal back to the goblins in Area 7 to actually release the flood, if you will. When the flood is released, this surge of water will rush down this particular channel and potentially wash one or more of the players downstream. Those players have to make a DC 10 dexterity check, and this is in area 3, is in this area here. So anywhere along this particular segment of the stream, they can make a DC 10 dexterity saving throw to avoid being swept away. A creature that fails to get out of the way can attempt a DC 15 strength saving throw to hold on. So they can, in other words, their feet are swept out from them, but they can, in part of the process, they are able to grab hold of a rock crag or ridge or something that's in the river on either side of the river, and are able to essentially prevent themselves from being washed out. If they fail that, they will be knocked down to area 1 and will suffer 1d6 bludgeoning damage along the way. So theoretically, all of these players have, with the exception of Fairfarn, have under 12 hit points. So if I roll 1d6 on the first one, and let's say I got a 6, well, that's more than half of their damage away. That could, with the triggering of excessive damage or shock damage, potentially render those characters unconscious during this particular process. And I, as the DM, would now set you up where you are now in a drowning situation because you're unconscious in the water. It's a 50-50 chance whether you're face up or face down. If you're face up, you're probably okay. If you're face down, your nose is definitely in the water. And now you have an X number of seconds, I believe, or is it minutes? I think it's minutes equal to the number of bonus points you get for your Constitution. I'll confirm that here in a second, so I'll go to the reference guide and show you on screen. But before you drown, so someone would have, anyone who survived in the upper part would have to survive and rush down and pull players out, or pull their party members out of the river to prevent them from drowning. Now, let's say that does happen, and 3 of the 4 party members are washed downstream. They've all suffered 6 hit points of damage. Well, if they go back up and the goblin triggers a second washout, well, I roll a d6 again and do more than 5 points of damage, or 4 points of damage in the case of Clever and Grow, 5 points for Duldor. Those 2 characters now, or those 3 characters could potentially go unconscious. The only one who could actually potentially survive this and not go unconscious out of this party is Fairfarn, because he has 13 hit points, and the maximum amount of damage that can be done would be 12, if I managed to roll 2 6s. So Fairfarn would be the only one who'd be able to go back and stabilize the party, but he has no way of healing the party. And that's where the pain point comes in. So you, as the DM, have to take your party composition into account when determining whether you want to make use of one or both of the flood scenarios. As well as, okay, do I want to wipe out the party on the first game? Because technically you could get to this particular scenario within the first few hours. I'm taking longer to get there because I'm going through explanations as we go through this process, so that you, as a DM, can learn what to look out for when you're dealing with these kinds of modules. And in the players' cases, I'm going through and explaining things so that they can see how their characters would function in a particular campaign scenario within the Fantasy Grounds interface. So even though I'm taking longer to record these, and I'm taking a long time to go through a particular segment of the module, as I get to a point where there's less and less explanation required to go through and cover off a given area, we'll move quicker throughout the module, and we'll move quicker throughout certain areas of this particular module. So that is one of the things as a DM that you're going to want to have to keep an eye out. So the party will most likely, if they've got a high enough perception check, will notice the goblin who's wandering back and forth across the bridge. The trick to them is going to be, can they do it before the flood is triggered? And that's only if they decide to go this particular route. They might decide to go this particular route and climb up this particular fissure here, and surprise the group that is here. So that is something that could also potentially happen. And if they do that, they completely null and void this flood because they're going to be coming back around this way, which means the flood is going to do them no harm. The other option is if they're able to stealthily sneak up to this particular point, they could climb this area with a little bit of difficulty and get into this particular portion of the map and or circle around this way and potentially ambush this particular goblin here before they could trigger a washout here. But again, if the entire party's up here, even triggering the wash here does no good. There's no point. So these are all the things that as a DM you have to consider and plan for is what direction is the party going to take. So with all that in mind, let's switch to the party screen. And right now the party has finished a long rest. So everyone is fully refreshed. All their hit points are recovered, and all of their spell slots and abilities have been recovered as well. And right now, they have a decision to make. And I'm going to move them up into this area again. Oops. So let's move. There. All right. So the party essentially is comfortable getting to here. They know what they're going to run into, and they know pretty much what happened in this particular area. Why is... Hello. I can't seem to move that character. There we go. Grabbed it with the DM controller. And that might be because of the restrictions on this particular block here. For some reason, I couldn't grab that character. So they have a choice. They can choose to go north or head to the east. And they haven't really examined this particular room yet, so they don't know that they can go to the east just yet. But they do know that immediately after dealing with the wolves that were in the area, they went through and simply rushed out to get some rest and decide to come back. So the party's going to take a look around this particular area. And I'm going to open up that particular part of the module, zoom in for you on the DM side. So they've already dealt with the wolves. All right. For sure. And this is the information that I'm looking for here as the DM. A narrow opening in the east wall leads to a natural chimney that climbs 30 feet to Area 8. And Area 8 is this area. Oops. I keep doing that. Is this area here. It's with the campfire, the storage containers and all of that here, the two pillars and stuff like that. A character attempting to ascend or descend the chimney shaft must make a DC 10 strength or athletics specifically check. If the check succeeds, the character moves at half speed up or down the shaft as desired. On a check result of 6 to 9, the character neither gains nor loses ground. On a result of 5 or less, the character falls and takes 1d6 bludgeoning damage per 10 feet fallen. So essentially the way that I'm reading this is that for every 15 feet that they are going to travel up that chimney, because if a character has a movement speed of 30, they're moving at half, that means they can only go 15 feet in the chimney. It's going to take 2 full turns of travel to get up that chimney. And on the second turn, they still have to make a check to see if they stay where they're at or fall down or are able to continue climbing. So let's see. Now, some of my players have in the past just simply rolled a die. Do we go left? Do we go up? And they roll a d6 in this case. And 1 to 3, they go up. 4 to 6, they go take a look. So when Grow was going around, he observed that there is in fact the ability to go up here. And if you look here on the player map, if Grow moves into this particular area, he's able to see a very narrow selection of that particular room. Okay, but if I select Clever, who hasn't yet gone there, she can still only see that particular area. So Grow is really the only one who can see that particular area. And this is why I love line of sight, because it's now per player. Now, it doesn't help that I'm running all 4 of these characters off of the same system. So all of my characters, me being the player, I know that there is that element up there that they could potentially make use of. But Clever and Fairfarn and Dualdor don't have that knowledge. So because I'm playing these multiple characters, I'm going to have to keep that in mind. So Grow did a quick look around. He observed that there is, in fact, a way that they could potentially climb up there. And it does, in fact, go somewhere. And then he came back and told the rest of the party. So now the rest of the party knows that that particular capability is there. So the decision is going to be made. Do we go up? We go east. I rolled a 6. All right, so they are going to try and climb this particular area. And Clever is going to go first, as she has the highest dexterity. Yeah. I could argue that dexterity skills could apply here as well. Acrobatics is dexterity, so why are they calling it a... Oh, it's an athletics. Yeah, okay, athletics. All right, so the order here is going to be Clever's going to try first. She's going to attempt to secure a rope, and she's going up stealthily on the off chance that there is somebody up there. And then the rest are going to try to come up afterwards. But I'm going to have the entire party roll a stealth check through the DM. So, if you look on the DM's party sheet side of things, I'm going to switch to the main tab and make use of stealth on this particular check. And it's going to roll for all 4 of them. And if you look on the party screen, it's not going to show the rolls there. But the high enough average here, let's see, that would be 33, 41. Divide that by 4. Let's see, is there a stealth indication here as to what they have to potentially roll higher than? No. So I'm going to make a call here that being quiet in that particular area will be required in order to not alert the goblins that are in that particular area. And only Fairfarn and Clever have been able to roll high enough for that. Why did Dualdor roll with disadvantage? Does he have an effect on him? No. Is it his armor? Possibly. He is wearing where's scale mail? And I do believe scale mail suffers a stealth disadvantage check, so that would explain it. Okay. All right, so I probably was not showing the whole window when I went through and explained everything there. Now I'm going to clear out all that because that's my keystrokes that I'm using to record stuff with, rather than have to flip back and forth, so I don't need those there. Okay, let's see. So Fairfarn succeeds, Clever succeeds, Grow does not, and Dualdor is essentially a metal band walking around down in that particular area. Okay, now the party doesn't know that. So as far as the party is concerned, they're all stealthy enough. But you as the DM could also state here that the average itself is greater. So if you take the sum here, 23, that would be 41, 50, 53. Divide that by 4. Thinking. Let's load up calculator here. My math is not great. 53 divided by 4 is below the average. That would tell me that the party as a whole is not being stealthy by any stretch of the means. Now, you could also play it that because they're going up individually, everybody's stealth checks on its own. Okay? So, the movement order here. Oops, I haven't set up a movement order just yet, and that's not what I wanted to do. Let me just, there we go, clear that out. Okay, so that triggered an initiative roll for me, so that is fine. So the good news here is that Fern and Clever do get to go first. Okay, so Clever is going to go up. She is going to attempt to climb through here, and she's going to roll an athletics check. She gets no bonus. Oops. And she doesn't even get up the thing just yet. She hasn't climbed enough to be able to get up there. So Fern, well, she's going to move back. Now, let's see. She tried to climb up. She fell. So she's going to take 1d6 hit points of damage. No, I'm not going to be rolling that there. I'm going to be rolling that over here. Ooh, she suffers 6 points of damage. Okay, so she landed heavy. Let's see, so she was there. 1, 2, she went up. Got partway up. Now, as a DM, I'm going to call it she didn't get high enough. So that's how, that's sort of the things that you want to do. So she maybe got 5 feet and then she failed. Which means that she'd be able to move out of the way. Fern, 5, 10, 15, 20. He's only going to be able to climb 5 feet. But let's see if he succeeds in doing so. Oops, skills. I really don't like the fact that it does that. So he rolls a 10. So he is able to climb. And he is now in the fissure. And because of his stealth roll, he is being fairly quiet. These two aren't really able to do anything just yet. So they go through, they just sort of mill around this particular area. And I should have done Fairfern first and then Clever next. But anyway. All right. So now it's the next round. In theory, Fairfern should be able to get up another 15 feet, which will put him at 20 feet up. 20 feet up the flue. Now he's going to have to roll another athletics check here. He still managed to succeed. So he is now at 20 feet. Clever is going to try to climb it underneath. And she should just be here. And she still doesn't get a grip on anything. And these two really can't do anything until she's out of the way, in my opinion. But these two, I might ask them to re-roll a stealth check. So let's do grow first. Still sounding like a brass band. And dual door. I don't know why it does that. I'm not sure why that rolled twice. Disadvantage again. I keep forgetting. It still sounds noisy as heck. All right. So now we're back around to the next turn. Farn has 10 feet left to go before he can actually get up to the top. All right, so he manages to make it without any issue, and he gets to here. And this is where you need to actually have this encounter populated. Now, all of these should be set up to be sensitivity specific. All right. So if you look on the player side with Farn's screen there, he can now see that there is a goblin there. His stealth check right now, technically I should re-roll another one, but he managed to get up here, and based on his previous stealth check, he is now up here without really making any noise. But he can't, let's see, he climbed up 10 feet. That means he'd have 10 feet of movement left. So he's going to position himself here behind this particular character and potentially take advantage of a stealth roll or a surprise roll. But before he does anything, Clever, let's see if she gets up there or is able to climb up. So actually, before he moves, he's going to stand there. Athletics. Still can't seem to get over that. Wow. All right. So here's where something can come into play. Fern is going to take rope, and he is going to lash it to his waist here and move out of sight on the next turn. So he's going to move up to there. He'll be visible from this particular goblin's location, but his stealth check right now is fairly good, so he shouldn't necessarily have to really do much. And what that will allow people down here to do is climb with advantage. Okay? So to do that, and again, these two couldn't move. To do that, what you do is you take this and you drag. So holding down the left mouse button, I've grabbed hold of that die 20. And I could either roll twice like this, or, and this is the more appropriate way to do it, on the player screen, if you look next to the combat tracker, you'll see this modifier and then these options here. I'm going to click on the ADV button here. And the reason I'm doing that is that's going to give this particular character an advantage check when rolling athletics. So it's going to roll twice. And she finally gets a roll that allows her to climb up 15 feet into the flue, thereby allowing Duldor, this guy here, the ability to potentially climb up as well. So Duldor is also going to secure the rope at the bottom, further assisting Clever. Now, this goblin can see Fern. So I'm going to have this goblin here roll a perception check. Okay, so perception is a wisdom check. That would be here. Pretty stupid, in the sense that he didn't see anything. And I'm going to have Fairfarn roll a stealth check. They are about... No, Fairfarn managed to roll a higher stealth check than what the goblin used. So he is still hidden. All right, so we're now on to the next round. Fairfarn is still holding the rope while Clever climbs. And I'm going to give Clever an advantage roll onto that again. So athletics. So she is now 15 feet up the flue. Oops, I keep reading it. Got to click that first. Okay. She manages to make it up. Now she is going to roll a stealth check here. And he is hidden. Okay. So she's going to move up to here. No, she's going to essentially stay here. But here's the problem. Now Duldor she'll have to move out of the way in order for Duldor to move up. So she's going to go there. And Duldor, let's see how he does on his athletics check. And again, there's advantage here due to the rope. Climbs up with ease. Essentially what happened, yeah. So Duldor has managed to succeed in his stealth check, or athletics check, coming up. He didn't suffer disadvantage because he's not making a stealth check just yet. Although, there's going to be some noise created for him, so I'm actually going to have him make a stealth check here. And that, to me, is high enough to indicate that he is quiet enough to not be heard by these two for the moment. Now, goblins have a passive perception of 9. So as long as any of the characters here rolls a 10 or higher, they will remain hidden. Now, Farnfarn rolled an 8 during his stealth check previously. But that was because I was having it so that this particular goblin was actively looking for something going on. So he's actively scanning this particular area. These goblins might be moving around. This Ripper might be moving around, although I think Ripper was supposed to be laying down, but Clark could be moving around, stuff like that. So these goblins could be moving around. And this fire is going to be bright in their eyes, which means there's going to be a bit of a disadvantage, or advantage, if you will, to who or what sees what here. And now, the wolf, however, where is it here? Ripper. Has a passive perception of 13. He's not going to see Farnfarn there because of the fact that the rock is in the way. But Clever rolled high enough that her stealth roll is higher than all of what these characters can see. So having her there is probably a very good option. So, not much that Clever or Farnfarn can do. He's going to move in a little bit closer so that he doesn't have to suffer any movement disadvantage. Duldor is currently 15 feet up, so I'm going to have Duldor roll another athletics check with advantage. And manages to succeed in getting up into this particular area. Finally, Grow. Grow is going to do an advantage check with his athletic skill. Why is it doing that? And he rolls a natural 20. To me, as a DM, that would mean, in my opinion, I would say that he was so graceful that he managed to climb all the way up utilizing the rope and not push, have to do the half distance, half speed. So that's how, in the case of a disc check, you as the DM can make a call. So he was so graceful in his climb up the rope that the tightness of the fissure had no effect on his ability to move up quickly. Would be the way that I would play that. All right, the party is now here. And Farnfarn has collected up his rope and is now ready to potentially engage the rest of this particular group. So let's say that this goblin has decided to go here. This goblin has decided to go here. Oh, now it's up. Okay, now we're into an active initiative capability because it's kind of obvious that Duldor's here. He couldn't really do anything else. But when this goblin came back, he was potentially facing... he can't really He's not upside down, he's just facing this direction. Okay? um, so, I'm going to center the party screen a little bit better so that that can be viewed. And here's how this is going to work. Farn goes first. So we are now into a combat situation. Farn is going to go bing, bing, bing. And if I'm not mistaken, his breath weapon is a 15-foot reach. So let's see. What is the range of this thing? Interesting. It doesn't actually state. The Draconic Ancestry determines the shape and size. So I got to go look at the race. Dig out his Draconic Ancestry, which is here. And it is a fire dragon, so brass. Ooh, 5 by 30 foot line, or yeah, so 5 by 30 foot line. So, how could he do this? Thinking. So he could potentially move to here and aim kind of like that. Now it's going to come from the center and go to the center. So he could hit up to 3 of the goblins, including Clark. He'll avoid Ripper unless he moves down here. And if that's the case, he would only get those 2. So no, he's going to try to maximize his ability to hit those. So, if you're not aware, the way that this would work is it would come off the edge of this particular thing here. Actually, he only does get 2. So he's going to get... Ooh. Is that a line or a cone? We had him being a gold, so that is actually a cone. Yeah, I made him a gold one. So that means it's a 15-foot cone. So that means that a 15-foot cone would go like this. So he'd be able to hit the goblin because it is... what did I set that as? I didn't specify the type. It's 2d6 fire. Fire is a self. It's a dexterity check, so I must have chosen copper. Sorry, brass. I don't know. Oh no, I said red. That's what it was. He's red. That's why. Okay. Yeah, so it is a 15-foot cone. Now a cone is this. So he's going to come from there, and that is 15 foot. That means he can actually get Ripper, the Goblin, and the Goblin. So he's going to attack all 3. I'm going to, just so that that's clear, red, so that I know exactly which type he is. So 1, get rid of that, 2, 3. All 3 of these are going to have to make dexterity saves, so I don't really have to do anything as a DM or a player. I just click on this, and it will roll all of those for me. Now, we have 2 successes and 1 failure. So all I have to do now is roll the damage, and the system is going to automatically take care of take care of dealing with the damage. Now, that was 8 points of damage that got dealt. And Goblin 10 took more than half of his hit points in damage. So Goblin 10, he took 4 hit points of damage, so it did do the half damage properly. But it was more than the 6 hit points of damage that he actually has. Ripper is flat out unconscious, which is good, because Ripper in my previous campaign was a pain in the butt for the party when I ran this for my group. And number 10, so that's this guy here. Number 10 is on the player side. That's this goblin here. He is suffering a disadvantage on reactions, as well as a disadvantage for attack and disadvantage for die checks. So things like with perception checks or stuff like that. Clark is now enraged based on what just happened. He just saw somebody come out and spit fire. So I am going to get rid of Ripper off the group here. The fire pit, I have no idea why the fire pit is actually a thing here, except for the fact that if somebody gets thrown into it, it could be used as an environmental object of some kind. So Farm could bodily pick this goblin up and throw him into the fire, and that creature would potentially suffer some damage, fire damage here, or a burn of some kind, depending on how long they were there. Clever goes next. She is going to take a look at dealing with Goblin 10, unless she has some other capability. She's going to take out attack Goblin 13. She does have the ability to hit, but she can also simply just move out and make the attack. So she'll do that as well. She'll actually do that. So she's going to target Goblin 13, and the reason she is doing that is she's going to make use of her sneak attack, provided she hits. She's going to use her ranged attack, and again, I still haven't picked up the arrows, but I'm going to say that she picked up 3 arrows when she was in here dealing with the wolves, so she's picked up 3 of her arrows back. Okay, she's going to attack. A natural 20. Nice. In addition to the standard critical hit damage, you knock the target prone. So, considering this particular goblin, oops, I didn't need to open up the fire pit, has 10 hit points, 6 of which remain, I could potentially, I'm going to do a minimum of 5 points of damage already, potentially 6 points of damage. That goblin might not even be alive to take advantage of that particular critical roll, and in fact, the prone state might be an unconscious state. So let's see how much damage I do. Yeah, that goblin is dead. So Goblin 13 is down. And I didn't even get a chance to take advantage of the sneak attack damage, just because of the critical hit. I didn't even bother applying it, because I knew there was going to be more than enough in there. So yeah, I mean, it was going to be dead regardless, because I had a minimum of 6 points of damage. I could potentially roll a 1 and a 1, plus the 4 is 6, and it only had 6 points left. So it was going down regardless. All right. So that takes care of her turn. The next target, so she's going to pass the token, and Dualdor is the next one who goes. And Dualdor, who is there, is going to walk 5, 10, target this particular goblin, so Goblin 10, and take a swing with this. Ooh, he has Thunder Wave. No, he'll save that. He's just going to attack with his scimitar. And that scimitar, oops. Why did that not? you have that goblin targeted. It is showing as targeted in the system, but anyway, the armor class for the goblin 10 is 15, so that is a miss. Okay, so that is going to be his movement. Now the fissure, again, doesn't come into play here. In fact, the fissure is now a moot element, so I'm going to remove it. Goblin 13 is unconscious, or dead in this case. So, oh, did I move? Yeah, no, I moved. Oh, crap, I did something wrong. Okay, let me go back to dual door. That is his attack. He is here. Yeah, so he's going to target that. He is going to roll the damage, or the attack, not grow. Derp. So he's going to hit with his hammer. That definitely hits. Yep, that is a hit. So he does 6 points of damage, and that goblin is now down. So the only one left is Clarg. Now, Clarg could potentially run and try to gain access to the goblins that might be up in Area 7 here, or the Twin Pool Cave Zone. So Grow is going to move here, going to target Clarg, and let's see, how far is Thunderwave? 15-foot cube. So let's see, he was there. So that was 5, 10, 15, 20. He is going to go there and cast Thunderwave. Clarg failed the Constitution save. So Clarg is going to take minimal damage, but he is now pushed back. I believe it is 10 feet. Yes. He is now pushed back 10 feet. Here's the thing. He's 5 feet away. That means Clarg gets pushed into this wall. And here's the thing. He's been pushed with such force, he's going to hit that wall. And in my opinion, that would mean that he's gotten hit by a bludgeoning object of some kind. And I'm going to roll, as the DM, an additional d6 of damage and apply an additional 3 hit points of damage to bring him up to 6. That's one example of how environmental things could come into play. So you're not necessarily just thinking about, oh, I need to attack that particular character or whatnot. But here's the thing. I do believe... okay. So any combat here does not alert anyone up here, and vice versa. So nobody up there is going to come rushing to the aid of these particular guys, even with the Thunderwave spell that just hit them. They'll probably just think it's like the booming of a wave in the water. All right. Now Clarg is going to go next. Clarg has multiple things that they can do. He has a brute capability. A melee weapon deals 1 extra die of its damage type when the bugbear hits with it, including in the attack. So, theoretically, and that might already be taken into account here. Does a Morningstar do 2d6 damage automatically? Yes, it does, according to this. Surprise attack, javelin. So, a melee weapon deals 1 extra die of its damage. So, theoretically, when I roll this, I should potentially be dealing with 3d8, not 2d8. But Clarg, who loved his dog the most, is going to 5, 10, 15, 20. He's going to deal with Farn here because he's the one that killed his dog. He's going to attempt to attack. And why did you roll with advantage? Oops. I don't understand why he rolled with advantage, though. I must have had the advantage button selected, so I'm going to re-roll that. He's still rolling with advantage. Is Phandelver prone? Why is he prone? Did I not clear that? Oops. Hang on a minute here. You aren't prone, so I don't know why. He didn't take any damage to deal with or put you into a prone situation. Okay, so here we go. That's actually the attack that should have happened. So he misses. All right. So now things are going to pass around so that Phandelver does not go first. Clever does. All right, so Clever is going to target Clarg. Okay, it doesn't knock them prone. All right. Excuse me. So Clever is going to target Clarg and is going to make a ranged attack. That hits, so I'm going to apply the sneak attack effect to her before I roll the damage, and then I'm going to roll the damage. So this is how quickly a fight can change. She just shot Clarg with a short bow bolt or arrow that did so much damage it exceeded his more than half of his total number of hit points. He rolled a system shock roll, failed that, and promptly dropped to 0 hit points, but is stable. He's not dead. He is stable. Now, the party has a choice here. They can capture him and take him back, and if they do that, I might actually allow the party to gain some additional experience points if they are able to get him back to Phandelver. On top of that, they now have the ability to question Clarg, but they have to go through and set up, like tie him up and wake him up and stuff like that. So they now have options. That is actually a very good attack from Clever. So that particular encounter has gone very, very well. I'm going to throw that into there. I'm going to award all the experience points out, and so close. So close to this whole situation. Now, this combat scenario is completely different than the combat scenario that I had in the previous time I ran this particular campaign. When I ran this particular campaign, I had a particular player who was playing a warlock that had a nasty habit of being able to get into the room and instantly behead all the boss mobs, including Clarg. He beheaded Clarg. Didn't even get an attack in that particular combat round, and that irritated me as the DM so heavily because not only did he do it to Clarg, he did it to a couple of other bosses where the party was really supposed to take advantage of situations and get information. And if we get to one of the other areas where that actually happened, I'll mention it and I'll explain what happened at that particular point. But in this particular case, the party had gone the opposite route. They went up the river. They did trigger a couple of the one of the floods anyway, but still managed to get up into this area without alerting anyone in this particular section of the map. So when they came in here, his character just walked up the stairs, walked straight up to Clarg, and rolled a 20. I was so upset that particular day. I'm like, oh god, I can now see how this particular campaign is going to go. So, now that this has actually happened, I'm going to have Clever take a line of rope. It's still technically, well, we're essentially done combat at this point. She's going to take a rope, and she's going to roll a dexterity check. And that would be a save. Dexterity check would be over here. And the reason I'm having her roll a dexterity check is she's going to tie Clarg up. And she didn't do that very good of a job. So, she moves up. She attempts to tie. And let's say Grow is going to double check the knots, realize that she hasn't done that great of a job. So Clarg is unconscious. And Grow is also going to do the exact same thing. She's going to examine the the bindings, realize that they're not that great, and definitely manages to secure Clarg up a little bit better. In addition, he's going to Duldor is going to go through and try to rouse Clarg, but before that happens, they're going to leave Clarg unconscious, and I'm just going to cycle to the end of the turn here so that we can get to a movement-ish round. So we're now in a movement round. I'm going to remove the fire pit from here. It doesn't need to be there anymore. I'm going to leave Clarg on the map. And they're going to go through and look for and search this particular room. They see that there are some provisions here and all that jazz. So, as the DM, you see supplies, you're going to be able to tell the party that they see supplies, and they're going to essentially see this for description. So you'll better see that on the player side of things right now, until I can figure out how to bring the player window up on the DM screen shortly. So essentially, it says the sacks and crates of looted provisions are piled up in the south end of this large cave. To the west, the floor slopes toward a narrow opening that descends into darkness. A larger opening leads north down to a set of natural stone steps, the roar of water or falling water echoing up from beyond. In the middle of the cavern, the coals of a large fire smolder. So that would be the description that the party sees. But they really didn't get a chance to look around because they immediately got into a combat situation. Now, theoretically, I wonder, is there a hide? Get rid of that. All right, so unfortunately there is no beaver or a wolf pelt or hide in the items list here, but you can easily create one if you wanted to. So let's say one of the party members wanted to carve the hide off of Ripper, the wolf that was there, as well as the wolves that are in the other room. Then they could do so, and you could potentially have them sell that for a little bit of extra gold, and you as the DM can ascertain whether that's going to happen or not. In this campaign, I'm not going to do that, but that's an example as to what's going to happen. But what they do find are some lost supplies. And I'm going to, on the DM screen, I'm going to drag that into the inventory sheet here. And how you do that is you just grab the eye symbol here and drop it into the parcel items thing. Now, if there's coins in here, it will automatically drop the coins into this section here. But there is also another parcel here. And this has coins as well as a couple of statuettes and potions of healing. So I'm going to drag that into place. And even if I drop it here, you'll see that the coins show up here. Okay, so clicking when you're doing parcel divvying, if you will, or loot divvying, if you will, there's a couple of ways you can do that. They could literally sell off this jade statue the next time that they're in town. But there's also a potion of healing here. There's two of them, and some supplies. Now, technically, this potion of healing shouldn't be visible yet. They haven't identified it. So what I've done is I just clicked on this eye, opened up the item, and then I clicked on this before the party actually gets to see it. And if you look on the party screen or the player screen, you'll see that all they see is a potion. If I restrict that, they'll see that it's a potion of healing. But I don't know why, but lately these items are starting in an identified state as opposed to being in an unidentified state. And that might be a holdover from when I had already gone through and played this campaign on the Classic Edition. So I'm not sure if that would have imported as a result. It's the same campaign, but I went through and I reset the campaign as part of this process. So I honestly don't know what's going on there. And technically that they would know that that's a jade statuette, and they know that there are supplies. So that is everything that they find in this particular room. But the problem is they now have a prisoner. And they still have the rest of this particular map to go through, and they also still have someone that the party is looking for. So we're going to deal with that in the next episode of this particular campaign. I think I'm at probably about an hour and 15 minutes now recording. And that was partially due to the information that I was giving at the beginning of the video, so that's perfectly fine. I still wanted to get a decent amount of time in on this particular campaign. So the one thing that I will do is that in the next video, if the party decides not to kill Cleric, but just does decide to take him back to Phandelver for arrest or to get information out of him, I will set up an additional experience point award if that actually happens. If they decide to kill him, that's fine too. They've already got the experience points for that. There's no need to apply any additional experience points as part of that process. It's already been taken into account as part of the total experience points awarded for the encounter. But we can go from there and deal with that at a later point in time. So there we go. Okay, so with that in mind, this is the end of Episode 5 of the Lost Mines of Phandelver tutorial campaign. I'll see you in the next video.